Well, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Like, share, and subscribe. Comment below if you're so motivated to do so. This is Wonders of a Black Woman. Well, the hog is out. What? He's been kicked off the farm. He's been kicked off the animal farm. David Hogg has been pushing to primary what he labels as ineffective incumbents in congressional and Senate races, maybe even local level races, but mainly I think he was focused on the congressional and Senate races. He was going to dunk $20 million towards that effort. And it got a lot of people up in arms. So the DNC does what the DNC does. The panel pushed to scrap David Hogg's vice chair election. According to CBS News and other sources, a Democratic National Committee panel on Monday recommended redoing David Hogg and Malcolm Kenyatta's election to party vice chair as Hogg faces a separate inter-party battle over his push to primary some Democratic politicians. The DNC's Credentials Committee passed a resolution determining that Kenyatta and Hogg's election in February was incomplete due to violation of the party's charter, and the party should hold 2 new votes with only candidates who previously ran participating. The resolution will now be presented to the entire DNC. And of course, I'm sure they are going to go along with this.
I am a former DNC member. Thank you for being here tonight. Okay. I want to play Malcolm Kenyatta, a piece of what he put out on social media yesterday and today. Take a listen to the other vice chair of the DNC, Kenyatta.
We have spent now weeks talking about one person, not about what the party needs to do, but talking about one person. And now, as this new thing has happened, the press is rushing to take David's word for it, that this is yet another way that people are trying to get him. David knows that's bull. I refuse to sit here and allow the press to continue to push this narrative as if I'm not sitting right here, and as if I didn't get way more votes than he got, and as if I haven't been doing the work of trying to rebuild this party.
What's your response to that?
Look, I have an enormous amount of respect for Malcolm Kenyatta as a vice chair of the DNC. Obviously, there's disagreements that we have. What I would say is you were right. This challenge came months, right after the election happened in the first place. What I would also say, though, is that in conversations that I've had with members of
the challenge came soon after he and Kenyatta were voted in because of some issue regarding unfairness to female candidates or something to that effect. And there needed to be some sort of gender balance in the executive board or something like that. And so the challenge, from my understanding, came shortly after the election in the DNC, which that whole DNC thing, I saw videos from that. It was a total shit show. But it was sort of squashed, the challenge, until David got in there and started basically showing his ass. And then that's when they started putting some energy behind the challenge. If David didn't get in there and showed his butt until it was closer towards election time, like, for, the midterm election and all of that, then they would not be challenging anything as far as the legitimacy of he and Kenyatta's seats, I do not think. So David's going to explain that, yes, this this objection, if you will, had come up shortly after he was voted in as vice chair, co-vice chair, or whatever the title is. But from his understanding, it was supposed to really not have any legs until he started saying he was going to challenge or have this effort to challenge these, what he called infective incumbents.
DNC, the consensus prior to our announcement of the primary challenge effort was that this effort to redo the elections was not going to make it past the committee. It was not going to move forward. That was the consensus of many of the members that I have talked to.
On the Credentials Committee?
Well, specifically around the DNC when they had conversations about this. And the belief now is that this is a useful opportunity that unfortunately has caught up Vice Chair Kenyatta as well in it, to use a simple majority in order to essentially vote me out instead of the two-thirds or the two-thirds requirement that they would have to officially remove me as an officer, because the consensus prior to this was that this was not going to move forward, but they believe, many of the members that I have talked to, that it is moving forward as a convenient way to remove me effectively with a simple majority.
I just want to make one statement and then I'll defer to the chairman and Alicia. I think that there are a lot of people that would say your argument is an argument that, like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Given everything that's happening, they are trying to get him out. But as you well know, the DNC, i.e. the officers in the building, they do not dictate what the membership does in terms of these committee hearings. And so if the feeling of the people on the committee has in fact changed, it's because that's what the membership does feel like. And so I think that you're conflating two things. How Chairman Martin and maybe some of the other officers feel about what you have taken up in terms of challenging, getting involved in primaries, but not primaries that would cost a race. And then this thing here with a apportionment of the rules.
But it's also the membership. And what I would say to that is, I believe when I talked to a member just about an hour ago about this, she said to me, David, I honestly believe if they came to the committee right now and said we have candidates A, B, and C in this whole situation and they left our names off of it, that this never would have gone through in the first place. And that's the broader issue. It's not specifically that, the officers are playing a role here. It's that people believe that there is a change in faith of what has happened here because of what we're doing in these primary challenges. And ultimately
So that's the explanation there. Obviously, Malcolm Kenyatta is very upset because he's being given the boot to the butt too. But the DNC, according to sources like Spectrum News 1, DNC proceeds with potential new vote on 2 vice chair positions held by David Hogg and Malcolm Kenyatta. The Democratic National Committee is setting up a vote among members to decide whether to conduct a new election on 2 of the party's vice chair positions, one of which is currently held by David Hogg. The activist and 2018 Parkland school shooting survivor has recently been in the spotlight over his pledged effort to challenge some Democratic incumbents in the upcoming midterm elections. Here's what I think about all this, and I'm going to wrap this up. When James Carville flipped out, saying that progressives such as David Hogg and AOC and Bernie should break off from the Democratic Party and form a new party, I think that they are correct in that. But he's correct in that. But it was easier for these far left people to infiltrate an already established party who's already on all the ballots in every state than for them to get it out the mud and form a new party. It's not easy to just snap and start a new party. It takes a lot of money and a lot of effort to do that. So you have a lot of people that instead of forming a new party, they infiltrated the Democratic Party and they basically, are trying to rearrange the furniture, do some remodeling of the Democratic Party from the outside and the inside. And you have people who are really traditional Democrats who are fighting against it. And you're going to see the Democratic Party splinter and splinter even more. The reason their ratings are so low is because a lot of people really, to the core of it, don't know what they stand for other than doing things like crashing out over illegal immigrants getting deported or being against Donald Trump. Donald Trump's not going to be president forever. People have to look at what did the Democrats accomplish when Biden was in office and Kamala Harris was in office. Then you have all these books that are coming out saying how everyone that were left-leaning supporters in the media and aides and Democrat leaders were covering up Joe Biden's mental decline. And from my understanding, according to Jake Tapper's book, he was basically on the verge of being in a wheelchair. So a lot of people just don't have trust for the Democratic Party at this point. Unfortunately, what David Hogg did was really create an even bigger rift amongst Democrats, and those nonpartisans that are looking at the Democrats are looking at them like they're a very disorganized, ununified party, which they are. The Democratic Party is a very fractured, splintered, disorganized, ununified party, is because you have people that have infiltrated the party instead of forming their own party, and they basically are infighting to the point where it's just dragging the whole party down. That tradition of wanting to cannibalize the older incumbents and those who've been in the party for a while, look at what they did to Joe Biden. They totally cannibalized him and forced him off the campaign trail. If they were after all those years he served the party, and I didn't agree with a lot of his policies, but I felt sorry for him the way, after he served the Democratic Party so long, the way they cannibalized and embarrassed that man and kicked him off the campaign trail, in essence. If they were going to be willing to do that, they should have did that a lot earlier in the game, forced him out of office, let Kamala Harris step in to show what she could do. But they didn't do that. They thought they were going to keep lying to the public, deceiving the public, and they thought that he was going to be able to hold up to ride into a second term. Then they would have cannibalized him, but it didn't work. And with their coronation of Kamala Harris late in the game, and I really question whether Joe Biden was the one who sent that letter out to the public saying that he was leaving the campaign trail. Now that we know that AutoPen and all these things were being used, did he even have knowledge that that was being put out there? And once it was out there, he couldn't retract it. So, I mean, back to David Hogg. This whole thing of wanting to get rid of these older candidates, I know he wants to clean it up to make it seem like it's not about age discrimination, but it is. He wants to put younger people in these seats. The issue that I have is just because someone's younger doesn't mean that they are going to be effective. Because the leader of the progressive movement is Bernie Sanders, and he's not rosy cheeks, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and young. So if you're feeding off of a lot of the ideas that come from someone who, what is Bernie? He's like in his 80s. But he's still of a sharp mind. He's still physically capable. So just wanting to challenge somebody just because their age, to me, is ridiculous. The thing is, what the Democratic Party is putting out there that they stand for is not really resonating with the public. Yeah, you have your blue no matter who crowd, and that's who the majority people that voted. People who hate Trump and people who are just blue no matter who. That's who showed up the last election for the Democrats. But once we get past this Donald Trump era of him being electable, then the Democrats still have not defined what they stand for. Only thing we do see them is fighting with each other and crashing out, cursing, and acting unfitting for the office that they are representing. And as far as David Hogg wanting to primary incumbents in safe seats, people who are in safe seats, like, for example, in Nevada, you got Dina Titus. She's been sitting in Congress in that seat for a while. She's an older person. Maxine Waters, she's an older person that's in a safe district, has been sitting in that seat. People in Maryland, people in Pennsylvania, New York. There are a lot of Democrats that are in safe seats. Spending money to challenge them just for the sake of challenging them without really laying out the platform of what you're challenging them on, just to have someone sit in the seat, just to sit in the seat. What do you stand for? What are you fighting for? What are you, and that has to be made clear. I think at the end of the day, what one ingredient that David Hogg is missing when it comes to challenging these incumbents that he say is ineffective, is the fact that the constituents are the ones that keep taking their ass into the voting booth or to the mailbox, dropping off these ballots for these people. They're the ones that keep voting for them. They're the ones that keep voting for these people decade after decade. So, if you are about democracy and not dictatorship, then you have to really reach the people to explain to them why this incumbent shouldn't be there. But it doesn't seem like the Democratic Party cares about democracy. They want to pick and choose who's going to be where and what. And David Hogg is trying to do basically what the DNC is going to do to him. Kick him out of a seat. Even though he was voted into that seat, they're going to kick him out of the seat. He's trying to challenge Democrats in safe seats. Well, those Democrats are in those safe seats because the Democrats in those districts keep putting those incumbents back in there. And that's really a piece of the ingredient that David, and that's why, sometimes wisdom comes with age, David. These incumbents are there because the voters voted them in. So you could challenge them and things like that. There have been many people who come along and challenge these incumbents in these safe seats. But unless those challengers really have a strong platform and a strong message to reach the individuals that are casting the ballots, you are really going to waste your money with trying to muddy up an incumbent and all of this public display of infighting, and the very goal that you have, which is to flip the House, is not going to happen. It's probably not going to happen anyway, but the people are stuck in these seats for 10, 20, 30, 40 years is because the constituents keep on voting for the same old people. You might want to learn something from the older folks, David, as you journey into the political spectrum, because there is knowledge to be gained from those people who have been around the block many, many times. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Comment below if you're so motivated to do so. This is Wonders of a Black Woman.